Ladies and gentlemen, Billy J. Kramer and the Decoders!
Welcome back to On the Roof. Today we have with us Billy J. Kramer from Billy J. Kramer and the Decoders. And welcome, Billy, to the rooftop.
Hi, Scott.
And it's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Yeah.
You grew up in Liverpool. What was it like? You know,
It was pretty tough. You know, it was a rough place, and I was born just after World War II.
Right.
So the place was, you know, got bombed a lot. There was nothing. Right. You know, we had ration books, and we didn't get candy, and food was in short. You know, it was a pretty rough time. But funny enough, I grew up where I grew up. We didn't even have electricity. We had gas mantles, and you know, there's no TV or anything like that. We went to the movies on a Saturday morning, and that was about it.
Wow.
You know. But, you know, didn't do me any harm, and I had a happy childhood there.
How much do you think that had to do with your becoming creative musically?
Yeah, I really don't know. You know, it was just something I always had an interest in singing.
Do you think that you were born with the gift of music? You know, like, is that something that you had to hone and develop? Or was it something that you kind of had and just perfected?
It was something that I had, and it really started off where I was in the classroom one day and in a music class, and the music teacher started playing something, and then he stopped playing the piano and said, "Carry on singing." And he walked around the classroom and picked out, "Oh, you can sing, you can sing." And I ended up a member of the school choir. We started practicing with him, and he always wanted me to sing solo. I never would, because I was an overweight kid and very self-conscious. And then we started doing like choral contests in places outside of Liverpool. Mm-hmm. We never won.
Did that get you over your shyness rather quickly?
No. It was something that took, even when I was successful, you know, I couldn't figure it out. You know, it's amazing, because I always tell people, you know, I was this shy kid, overweight, and the next thing, you make a hit record, and I always say, how do you become good looking overnight? You know, from like being this shy, overweight kid, you've got all sorts of girls screaming and knocking on your door. And the ones that didn't want to know you suddenly do, you know. But I think it kept me grounded.
There's also like Miles Davis had stage fright. That was, you know, huge issue for him. Van Morrison, people that really accomplished, you know, guys that made their living touring.
It's just one of those things, and it stuck with me. For you know, they say nothing succeeds like success. But even when I became successful, I never felt that I was great. I never thought I was some wonderful talent. And believe it or not, I think I was like 52. And I was singing at the London Palladium. And I said to myself, you know, I think I know what I'm doing now. You know. But I still get uptight and I get nervous, and it's just a natural thing.
Is that part of the rush? Is overcoming that night after night after night, like that you get that adrenaline, that when the fear kicks in and you got to get in front of people and do your thing?
Funny enough, sometimes on show days I'm uptight all day. You know, sometimes it's worse than others.
Yeah.
You know, some nights I'll stand at the side of the stage and say, what am I doing this for? You know, and other nights I go, I'm going to kill him tonight. And then other nights I go, I don't want to do this.
Right.
You know. I started off with a neighbor who lived just down the street from me. He had an acoustic guitar, and I bought this guitar, and I taught myself the chords and everything. And we got together in his back room and started doing like Everly Brothers songs and songs, skiffle songs, and whatever was popular at the time. Then one day the guy said to me, you know, your guitar playing is not improving very much. I think you should have a go at taking the singing over. And I didn't want to do it. I thought it'll be a novelty for a while and it'll wear off and I'll get back to just strumming a guitar. I never saw myself as ever being, you know, a big singer, a recording artist or anything like that.
So was there any formal training at all?
Nothing at all, no.
Amazing.
Yeah. And really, in like the last 5 years, was the first time I went to see a coach, a vocal coach, and I wish I would have done it when I was very young. I always thought like rock and rollers don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And I went to see a coach and I started working with him, and it was the best thing I ever did. I learned things that I never knew. I learned the easy way of things that I used to struggle with.
So when did you do your first recording? Like when did you first hit a studio?
I hit a studio. I think I did the test for Decca, Pi, got turned down, and then eventually I got with EMI with George Martin. Brian Epstein was managing me.
Now, how did that happen? I mean,
he was managing the Beatles. They hadn't made any records at this time.
Right. They were just playing, cover songs and
I was playing the same places.
Right. Okay. So.
And so, you know, he obviously saw me there, and I came very high in a popularity contest. And then he approached me, you know, asked me would I like to do it full time, and obviously I jumped at it, you know. And he gave me a song, Do You Want to Know a Secret, which is a Lennon McCartney song. Nobody at that time knew of their songwriting abilities because they weren't doing their own material live. And I rehearsed the song. It was just given to me with John Lennon.
Tell that story of how that song was given to you by John.
It was given to me on an acoustic guitar, and he apologized for the quality of the song. He said, I've recorded this in the quietest room in the building, and at the end he flushed the toilet. And I thought, well, that's typical of John Lennon. I wasn't, you know, knocked out with the song. And we did a test with George Martin, and a couple of weeks later Brian called me and said, George wants to release it. And I said, well, I think we should find a better song. I was totally in shock when it became a #1 hit. You know, there are records you make and you think, you know, I think this one's got a shot, or I think it's well made, and whether it does or not.
So your version of
Do You Want
a Secret is the first hit song. It's the first recorded song of John Lennon and Paul McCartney.
Apart from their own, they'd had a hit with like Love Me Do and Please Please Me.
Okay.
But it was the first time somebody else had done one of their songs.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was very surprised. I remember getting a call, I was in Oxford, to say that it was going to be #1 the next day, and I was like, what am I going to do now? You know?
What did that do to you? I mean, you know.
Made me even more uptight.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, is that like, that's like the pinnacle of success for you're what, 18, 19? Like
yes.
That? And then that's got to be like, and this is 1963?
Yes.
I mean, come on.
It was.
What more could a kid even dream for?
I don't know. I was just like, it was a very exciting time,
right.
But at the same time, it was a lot, you know, coming from the kind of background I did, to sort of suddenly be getting all that attention and everything.
It caused anxiety.
It caused anxiety, and you know, it was a problem to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it, but also like from the outside looking in, it's almost like, wow, that is just so much, and we often don't see the other side of it.
You know, from like being this like working class kid to suddenly, like if you went into a bar, people had, you know, some people would give you a hard time, believe it or not. You know, there was people who were jealous because you're getting so much attention from young girls.
How much debauchery does a song like that, a hit like that, bring a kid your age at that time?
To me, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I started off where I would go, instead of like a normal life, I would go out at midnight when there was no one around. And I'd go to some club and I'd stay out till 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, drinking, you know, and I, you know, afterwards I thought, you know, I wonder how this affected my parents to see the change, you know, the son staggering in the house at 7 in the morning.
Right.
You know, and I would sleep all day and wake up to all this insanity.
Wow. And this is an overnight deal. Like, it's not like there was a drinking progression that led up to this.
And I always say there's no schools to learn about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you're flying by the seat of your pants and you just have to try and do the best you can, you know.
Yeah.
But
hard knocks.
Yeah, it's a hard knocks, but, you know, I'm still around with it.
Yeah. You've certainly endured.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Now you have a #1 single.
Right.
What do you do from there?
I was touring with the Beatles.
That's it?
And you know, when John Lennon came up with the song "Bad to Me,"
right,
and you know, I thanked him, but even with that, I didn't really know what was going to happen. And when that was a hit, that was like even more intense.
And that was written for you to sing.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that went #1, #2, whatever.
It went to #1.
Right. So 2 in a row. You're on a flyer.
I'm on a flyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like flying all over the place. I came to America. I actually came to America before the Beatles. A lot of people, they go about the British invasion. I was there before anybody.
Yeah, but you were like a CIA spy.
I think so, yes.
To check out the groundwork.
I was checking out the groundwork for the Beatles. You know, but not a lot of people know about that. You know.
Yeah. So what was that like? I mean, because you didn't have them and their experience to kind of, you know.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, George Harrison once said the thing is they all had each other to sort of to talk to.
Right.
You know, with me, I mean, it was a situation where Brian had put me with the Dakotas. They were 4 strangers. They were from Manchester, which there's a thing between Liverpool and Manchester, you know.
Football thing?
Yeah. And it wasn't the greatest relationship, you know. We didn't really have anything in common.
Yeah, except the fact that they're making a living.
They're making a very good living.
Yeah.
I just think, you know, it was like living at the speed of sound, you know.
I can imagine. Actually, I can't imagine. What was big there? Do you say, oh, listen, we got to do Ed Sullivan? I mean,
I can't remember.
American Bandstand?
No, it was just small time things, you know,
right.
And radio. And, you know, I was like, I remember getting off the plane at it wasn't Kennedy then, it was Idlewild. He said, what do you think? I said, I think we should get on the next plane home. You know, I was so intimidated by it all. But the thing was, I mean, what I liked about New York was nobody knew me.
Yeah.
And it was away from all that craziness.
Right.
I remember being like, one thing I didn't like was, I remember I was staying at the Waldorf Astoria, and I went to buy a drink, and in England, you could drink when you were 18. I go to buy a drink, and they say, you got to be 21. I'm like, I came all this way, and I can't even drink, you know. And but there was a way around it, you know. There was ways.
How long did it take you to figure that out?
Not very long.
Less than an hour.
Yeah, less than an hour.
Were you intrigued by the music that was being generated in the States here, like, you know, influentially?
I think we all were, you know. Believe it or not, I mean, I had a list of like different friends and musicians they gave me this list of different albums that you couldn't get in the UK.
Right.
You know, and I remember going back and taking this, you know, because, you know, in England at the time there was no real rock and rollers. It was like Cliff Richard, who had a big hit with Move It. There's people like Marty Wilde and Billy Fury. Cliff had been to America and didn't make it, you know, in 1958. But I was, you know, at the time I was doing like Rick Nelson songs and Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, you know, some Roy Orbison things.
Right.
Whereas today, you know, I see like these tribute bands, like Tribute to the Beatles, and I find that very annoying because, you know, I tell people, unless you saw the Beatles live at the Cavern, never before the Suits, the whole bit, you haven't seen the Beatles.
Right.
And I think these, you know, it really annoys me when I do shows and I hear American guys calling each other John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and wigs and coats, you know, the suits, and trying to copy the music. And I think, you know, it's great that young kids are still into that because they wear the best. But to me, I think the legacy is being watered down.
Yes.
Because people are not seeing them. You can't, it's like...
You can't see them, they're dead.
You know, I think, you know, I was thinking about it recently. It's like everything that's historic eventually gets watered down anyway.
Yes, but that music has and will stand the test. I mean,
well, you know, there was like Frank Sinatra in the 40s, and then there was Elvis in the 50s,
yes,
and the Beatles. It's 53 years now. I see these kids on talent shows, and I think, you know, when are you going to do something of your own?
Yeah. What is left to do, though, in music that hasn't been done?
Yeah, you can always say that. You know, you just keep on doing it, you know. I always play around with music till I find things that I haven't done or I've wanted to do, or wouldn't it be neat to do this? You know, I'll get a song and I'll play it 20 different ways till I find a way that I like to do it, you know.
Do you think that, like, the interpretation by the Brits of a lot of the American blues or the American jazz, it's been interpreted and it's brilliant stuff?
It's brilliant, but, you know, I think, you know, I always say that we recycled a lot of the American stuff, you know.
Yeah, but you know what? If you listen,
And in some cases, I'll be honest with you, in some cases it works. In a lot of cases it doesn't. It's like, you know, I love the Beatles. They're my friends and they wrote me great songs. But you see, I prefer Arthur Alexandra singing Anna than John Lennon because I was exposed to it before I heard John Lennon do it.
But John Lennon doing that song exposes that many more people to the song.
That's right. You know, what I say is you've got to make it your own.
Right.
And if you can't make it your own, don't do it. Like I was at the Beacon Theatre and Celine Dion was singing River Deep Mountain High, and I went, you shouldn't go there. You know what I mean? I don't think people should be doing You've Lost That Love and Feeling. There's certain records that don't go there because they're done.
Because
they're never going to be better.
Well, but is that because you personally hold that particular song sacred? Like it represents something real significant to you?
I look at the elements of how well it was done. Whitney Houston, to me, did the best version of the national anthem that's ever been done. Nobody will ever do it better.
Really?
That's my opinion.
Even though that was pre-recorded?
It doesn't matter to me.
How about Marvin Gaye's version with the boombox?
Well, Marvin Gaye is another thing, you know, altogether.
Leave Marvin alone too, right?
You leave you know, I always say that. You leave certain things you leave alone.
Brilliant, man.
I mean, I thought the Sex Pistols doing My Way was pretty cool.
What about Joey Ramone doing A Wonderful World? You ever hear that?
No, I didn't.
Oh my God. I stopped the car when I first heard them going, this is cool. This is all that energy. Bang, you know.
Yeah.
To
It's like
Armstrong.
I left one day. I was driving along the car, and I heard Frank Sinatra singing something, and then immediately he goes, "You stick around, Jack," and I'm like, "Who the fuck's Jack?"
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So as music has progressed and evolved,
Right.
all of these different phases of it, I mean, you know, when you're watching it from your perspective, I find that very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you know, at times there's been times, like for instance, like when Flower Power was around.
Right.
I was like, "What's it all about?"
Yeah.
And people wearing kaftans and everybody going love and peace, and you know. And funny enough, I remember doing this gig, and I was wearing this yellow kaftan and beads, and a guy walks on the stage, and the girls are still screaming, and pours a pint of beer over my head. And I'm like, I said, "What'd you do that for?" And he went, "I didn't want it." And it kind of put me off all that year. I remember John Lennon was always pushing me when I did shows with him. He'd go like, "Well, where was the show tonight?"
Yeah.
You know, you phoned it in, Billy. You didn't give it to, you know, you didn't give it to the audience.
Yeah.
What's the matter?
Yeah. It's fun. It's interesting that you just went there. We talked earlier that your reference to these legends of music, John Lennon being one, working with George Martin, and your experience is it's like another day at work. This was my learning curve. It's not like I wasn't so impressed because you're in the fire with them.
I'm glad in a way, you know, because I'm not like, I love music, I love entertaining, but I hate the business. It's like I always say, I'd sooner go out to dinner with a local plumber than Mick Jagger, and that is a fact, you know, because what am I going to talk to him about?
Right.
I remember being here for like 16 years, and a lady one day came up to me in the street where I lived and said, "You know, I've twigged who you are." And I said, "Really?" I took her in the house and I signed a CD and I said, "Don't tell anybody." You know, I've always been private. You know, when I see people getting big deal, and I'm like, you know, why? It's not, it doesn't, I don't get it.
Yeah. But see, that's the whole point of the guests that we have on here. This is really about authenticity.
I enjoy doing what we're doing now,
Yeah.
because I can be myself and I can say what I want. And it's not trying to be on all the time just because people, or I've got to impress people in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
People didn't know me, really. And I think they got the way that they got fed up, you know, because, you know, I was never busted for drugs.
Right.
You know, I was never in trouble with the police. I had this very clean image. Behind it, I was worse than anybody. But I always felt that, you know, it wasn't, I felt responsible. I felt responsible, and I wanted to be a role model. And what I did, I always said that if I went on the stage for 2 or 3 hours, the rest of the day was mine. It was nobody's business. You know, I never approved of all these rock people going on about their partying and habits. I thought it was very uncool, and I think it damaged a lot of kids. And I'm not a goody-goody. I've done it all. Yep. You know, I've been clean and sober for 30 years, but I don't shout it from the rooftops.
Right.
You know, you know, I think that a lot of rock musicians had a certain responsibility to the youth coming up, and I think they were totally wrong.
Do you have to make a conscious effort to keep, you know, your game under wraps?
I kept it under wraps. I always had normal hair. I always dressed well, and I thought they're going to leave me alone. They're not going to pick on me. They're not going to knock on my door. Afterwards, I always went off.
Yeah.
You know, but eventually it did catch up with me.
Yeah.
You know, I got away with it for a long time, but in the end, the bubble burst, and that wasn't nice.
Any rock and roller from your generation that is alive has come to some sort of realization along the way, right?
Oh, you have to.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, it was like, it became, you know, it's just a thing like, I can go back on my life now to when I would do the Cavern Club. And at the Cavern, there was like a place called Yates's Wine Lodge. And I would always go there. They sold this cheap Australian wine. I would go to all 4 of them. There was 4 in the centre of Liverpool before I do the Cavern. And I'd go and do the Cavern, and that was it. And it went from that to being really on my knees eventually.
Yeah.
And, you know, to me, I can look over my life now and I can see where I was productive, where I was creative, where I did good things, and how it gradually slipped away. And the pain it caused to a lot of people and to myself, you know, to a point where today I feel that I'm very blessed. I never thought that I would get back to what I am today. It was so bad. You know, I just never thought it, you know.
And it's an amazing place. I mean, where you are now, amazing.
I think I've never felt better. I've never felt better mentally. Obviously, at my age, you get aches and pains here and there, but my creative juices are flowing like I was 20.
Right.
You know, I just did a British Invasion tour here, and a lot of shows out in California, and I did this 30 concert tour in England, and I never thought them kind of things would come my way, you know. I stopped playing guitar very early on because I was intimidated by some of the people that I saw. You know, I met Jimi Hendrix the first day he arrived in England.
Really?
Yes. I knew Eric Clapton, a lot of great musicians. So I thought I better leave that alone. And then my wife bought me a guitar about 25 years ago. And then one day I said, I'm going to go out and buy a new guitar. And she said, you crazy? I haven't played it in 25 years. And I went out and I bought this guitar, and I went around a lot of shops, and I sat at home and like, I don't know where it came from. I can't explain, Scott, but I sat down and I wrote the song Liverpool with Love.
Oh.
Because it was coming up to like the 50th anniversary of all this stuff happening. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like, I thought like that the industry had totally cold-shouldered Brian Epstein. And I wanted to write a song about all that, which I did. I couldn't understand why this guy who discovered the biggest band that the world has ever known, and still are 50 years later, why isn't he in there?
Right.
And I started...
So you kicked off your personal campaign.
It was like a personal campaign, and then I wrote the song Sunsets at Santa Fe, and I thought that'd be it, and then one thing evolved to another, and I came up with this album that I have now, I Won the Fight, you know.
Great album.
And, you know, people say to me, like, what do you mean you won the fight? And
I know what you mean.
And I say, you know, when you've been through what I have and you're still out there doing it, you've won something, you know. I got this letter one day in the post, and it was like from a lady called Sandra Boynton. And she writes a lot of kiddies' books. And she said, my sister bought me your first album. I've always been a fan. And I'm saying to my wife, you know, the logo, I know this woman, you know. I never knew she was this big, renowned person. And she used to put books out with a CD. You know, she has a guy she writes with. She said, I'd like you to do one of my songs. And it was a thing called Cow Planet.
Right, I did see that.
And I'm like, I said, I got to do this. It's got to be fun. And I did it, and I met Sandra Boynton, and the next thing, she calls me up and goes, you know, I noticed that when we were doing some editing that you spoke, and I want to do these children's apps. Would you narrate them for me? And there were things like that I never, ever thought of doing stuff like that, and I did them. I did about 6 of them, and I was in the hospital. I was getting a test for something, and the doctor said to me when I was on the operating table, he says, you know, I don't know your music, but my kids love that book, the Going to Bed book, that you narrated for Sandra Boyman, which I thought was like very different. You know, it's things. You know, I believe now that if you do the right thing and you're honest, which I try to be, good things happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of good things have happened.
You're an approachable person. When I first met you, I had no idea what your career was. I had no idea at all, you know. But you were just a very approachable person. You were easy to talk to and very friendly, you know. And that, I think, is a lot to be said for just that, being like without getting into this whole star, you know, do you know who I am type of thing. You never gave off that aura.
Thank you very much. That's nice to know, you know. To me, the only stars are the ones in the sky. It's like people, they always want to talk about the Beatles, and I just go, well...
Talk to them.
They're human beings.
Yeah. Do you think that their gift was that extraordinary as songwriters?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Because, you know, since the 60s, the different bands that have been about, and talented people, to me, it is phenomenal, and it's great. But there's nobody had. To me, the tunes, nobody's got anywhere.
Short window of time.
Nobody's.
A lot of work there.
Nobody's ever got near it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Beatles opened the doors for all of us.
Yeah. But it's still music. I mean, it's
still music.
It's you know.
But it took something that was really different. There was a lot of things to overcome. You know, a lot of boundaries. You know, when I think of like the early days of like Brian Epstein, for instance, there was no recording studios in Liverpool. You know, you couldn't get on. You know, it was in the north. It had this reputation of being hard and tough, and you know. People in the south were like, you from Liverpool, they'd run. And I always say to people now, it's like all like these English bands that break it in the States now, I still say you would never have done it without the Beatles.
Is there a higher compliment to pay? I mean, you know.
I don't think it's a compliment. I think it's a fact.
Did you feel any kind of pressure being like in the shadow of the Beatles like that?
No, I always thought the Beatles were God, and I thought that I had a certain talent, but I knew that I could never raise the bar like to be anything on a level with them, you know. It's like Brian Epstein said to me when I first signed with him. He says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to become an artist that's appreciated." I'm standing in a dance hall in Liverpool, and you know, I was interested in bands and wanted to get to know about them because I was in the process of putting one together. And the DJ goes, "Next week we have a band called the Beatles." And I go, "That's cool." And it was a Thursday night, and I used to always go to this Litherland Town Hall. And I go to Litherland Town Hall, and there's a board outside, and the Beatles' name is chalked on it. And the DJ goes, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Beatles." And the curtains open, and Paul McCartney is singing "Long Tall Sally." Now, to this point, people used to mingle around the perimeter of dance halls and all hang out and try and check girls and stuff. Everybody ran to the front.
And they're still doing cover songs at this point?
Yes.
And the fascination is
wow.
Control.
Yeah. Now, you know, there was no hype there. I always say it's like people said, somebody asked me a question a while ago and they said, you know, how would you compare Simon Cowell with Brian Epstein? And I said, you can't, because Brian Epstein saw 4 guys in a cellar with sweat running down the wall, but he had the vision. When you see these talent competitions now, they're already produced.
Yeah.
They have the best sound, they can correct sound with auto-tune, people are dressed, the whole thing, you know, it's a whole totally different thing.
Right.
You know, how many people, to me, a talented person is somebody who can stand outside of Penn Station on a soapbox and sing a song and get attention. You know.
Yeah.
It's like a C1 talent contest where the guy's singing a song like Lean on Me, and the next thing a 50-piece choir comes from nowhere. That's not a talent contest. And the amazing thing is, on all these shows, I never hear anybody do a new tune. It's always an old tune and a cover tune.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very content. You know, I'm happily married for the second time, and I like what I'm doing. I like the shows I've been doing in recent times, the things I've been recording, and you know, it's called peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Do you ever know how valuable that would be?
I never thought a thing about it. I never thought about it, you know. You don't think of things like that.
Yeah.
You just, to me, it's like, I think we all go through spells of chasing rainbows, you know, and you're never going to find it.
Billy, we touched on your latest album. It's out about a year now.
Yes.
A year. I Won the Fight.
Right.
Talk about what brought this album about and how personal of a project it is to you. I Won the Fight was just one afternoon. Me and a guy playing bass and I played guitar. There's a song, Breakfast in Marin, which, you know, I'd had for a long, long time, but it was never right. Yeah.
And I thought I have to find a way to make it right.
Yeah.
You know, and John Lennon had always said to me, that, you know, there's a thousand ways of doing a thing in songs, but there's only one way that's going to really make it work. And, you know, some songs, that, you know, you'll start them and knock them about in 1,000 ways. And that had been sitting there 30, 40 years. And I played it to my manager one day, and he said, you should play that. He said, I've been cutting the grass and listening to that song. So that was that. And I did, you know, I'd always wanted to do a duet. And I'd seen this girl, Christine Allman, who's the Beehive Queen. Yeah. And I didn't know whether she wanted to do it even. And I emailed her, and she said it'd be a pleasure. And we did Falling and Flying.
But you've met a lot of guys who you work with on this album and in other more recent projects too.
Right.
Again, the irony is uncanny how you come across these people, these relationships, into what they've become, right?
Well, you know, I mean, like this, the guy I've got very, very close to is Don Salenza, who's a guy from Long Island. Mm-hmm. And we got to talk, and he played for me, and it's been the best collaboration I've ever come up with. You know, he co-produced the album, he played guitar, he played bass, mandolin.
And you've certainly played with some big names. I mean,
and Donnie's one of these people, to me, he should be up there with them. I come from the old school where you step out of line, you're finished.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I work with a lot of talented people who said one thing and gone. You know what I mean? Because I always say to people, like, you know, I don't get, to me, I'm a sort of like touch, feel, you know, it's for real. You know, I'd sooner sing in like 500, 300 people. You know, you see these crowds, and to me, it's like, it's very impersonal. How can you have like a sort of real contact with somebody in the audience when it's just a massive faces?
I'm stuck in a musical time warp. I still love what I grew up listening to.
Well, you know, music's a very funny thing, because it's like, I was talking about jazz the other day, and the reason that, you know, and my explanation, it's like, I used to go, the Royal Philharmonic used to come to my school and play Peter and the Wolf and all these classics, and I never thought I'd be like taking my sister. You know, my sister, I was educated better than me. She went to grammar school and never had all classical records. That's all she collected. And I always thought that she'd like look down upon me, you know, because I'd have all these flashy clothes hanging around in the house. And I never thought I'd take her to the Santa Fe Opera or Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
But I have, you know, and I go, You know, Eva, I got to tell you, after all these years, I thought you were a snob.
You said this to your sister?
Yeah. And she said, I thought you were a flash young man.
Did you get into jazz? Did it influence you at all?
The reason it influenced me was because I was always fascinated by timing, different timing and things, you know, and I always wanted to, like, if I heard something jazzy, it's like I go when I hit take 5. I thought, like, well, I never heard that before, and I had to catch it, and that's what I feel about timing and jazz. You know, that kind of stuff fascinates me.
I always feel so ignorant when I talk to anybody that really understands jazz, because I don't. I appreciate listening.
I don't think they enjoy it. They understand it. You know, jazz to me is just it's guys who they go to another place. You understand what I mean? Musically, they go to another place. Play me 10 notes that knock me off, that really affect me emotionally. I don't want to hear 130 seconds. Mm-hmm. You know, these guys, I go to see some guys and they've got like tremendous techniques and they're all over the place playing, but there's none heartfelt. You know, I had one guy call me up and he said, I'd love to do your tour. And I went, well, I've got somebody. And the reason I said I got someone was because, like, he was a great guitar player, but to me, for me to turn an audience on, I've got to be turned on.
Yeah.
You understand that?
That's the honesty, though. That's your integrity. That's great.
You know, if somebody's got to hit me up the backside to get me to rock.
I won the Fight album. It's a very close, personal piece to you, and that's it. Am I taking liberties when I say that's an accumulation of a lifetime worth of ups and downs?
It's a lifetime of ups and downs, and finally finding out, you know, what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, because I've never attempted anything like that before. You know, I never.
You mean something so personal?
No, I never went in the studio and said, like, this is what I want.
Oh, okay.
You know, because my albums that I did with George Martin were the hits, the B-sides, and anything people wanted me to sing. Oh, yeah, sing this, Billy. Yeah, fine. And that was it. There was no personal touch. There was no emotion in it. You know, maybe they were popular with people at the time. I don't really know. It's like now, and this is not a conceited thing to say, I can't sing something that I don't like. Mm-hmm. I can't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Our stories are dramatically different.
Right.
I used to do this when I was like 12 years old with professional athletes and stuff like that, and I did it all on my own. It was one part of my life I was very proud of. And I'm doing it again with it 40 years later. But obviously the subjects are different because those 40 years are my story. And
right.
But I feel like I'm almost coming full circle. Your album makes it just makes what I'm trying to do for myself so validating.
Thank you.
You know, because I admire you for the enthusiasm you have for what you're doing. I mean, you had a giddy up just as soon as we met today.
Right.
Like, it's amazing, and I love that, in people, especially when you share some of the stuff that you've been through. That you get to this point, it's optimistic and enlightening for everybody.
Well, I think that's great, and I hope it's a big help. You know, it's been a hell of a journey, and it's not always been great. Right. I mean, I really went down, and a lot of it is self, and it's I hate to say this, I didn't think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't think things through like I do today. For instance, in the song Sunsets of Santa Fe, it goes, I feel foolish when I cry.
Yeah.
And that came from from my youth, from when men don't cry. You know, there was like a family member died or relative, and your father would be going like, whatever you do, don't cry. Be a man.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, and I was sat there one day and went, you know, that was wrong, you know. Why should I feel foolish when I cry?
But how about all those layers that have to be peeled away to get from that guy that can't even cry to expressing real intimate, you know, life experiences in this tremendous story of yours?
Sure. Well, I don't know.
Talking a man talking to another man about vulnerability was impossible.
Right.
No way. You know, no way.
You know, when you think that 50 years ago it was a crime to be gay,
Right.
it was against the law.
Right.
Now it's acceptable.
Right.
And, you know, and why not? You know, there are some people who go, no, it's in the Bible, and
Right.
I just say if there is a living God, is a loving God, that he loves everybody no matter what they are.
Right.
You know, I had a retarded brother, which a lot of people don't know about. And I know what it was like being a kid to have my brother, who I loved,
Right.
being ridiculed and people taking the mickey and all that kind of thing. And, you know, people have come a long way in that area.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, it's only when you get older and you sit down and you think, you know, how cruel people can be and some of the things and what you went through, you know, getting into squabbles and fights over, you know. But I believe until you become honest, you don't stand a chance.
Right. But that's so the blessing comes from having experienced the
Yes.
pain. That now you get exposed to this other way of life that without the pain you don't get to go there.
Right.
You don't get to learn this stuff.
That's right.
You know, it's a hell of a school to go to.
Yeah, to me,
You know.
you've got to go through that school to find peace of mind.
So peace of mind, that's the ultimate.
That's to me is the ultimate high. You know, it's like forgiveness. You know, I mean, things happen and they upset us, and I want to kill this person, and you know. And funny enough, I had it while I was making this album, where somebody who was very close did some real nasty stuff, and it got very legal and tough, and you know, and people said pray for him, and I did. And I actually feel sorry for him now. Because instead of having this hatred and anger, I go, you missed so much. We did this thing, you lost out on it. You lost my friendship, you lost other people's friendship. You didn't, whatever level of success, you missed it all because of the way you were, and that's sad. I'm sorry for you.
Well, I mean, this is the blessing for me. Like, this is not a big deal what I'm doing. This is, you know, but the fact that I can't talk to you this way. If we're at a diner somewhere or at a party somewhere, we'll talk and you know, even personal things can come up, but not where we're really delving into who Billy is.
Right.
You know, and how far he's come and what he offers and what he's learned.
There's also, you know, one time,
Tremendous thing.
Billy wouldn't let you in.
No, Billy. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about when I was a kid.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you don't let people in. There's always that.
Yeah.
You know. But I think I hate to say it, it's time.
Yeah.
Time takes time.
Brilliant, Bill. You know, I can't thank you enough.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
A thrill.
Thank you.
Thrill. I'm honored to be your friend, buddy.
Thank you.
This is the record, and it's called I Won the Fight, Billy J. Kramer.
And it's on billyjkramer.com. I like to send people hard copies. I like to autograph them and put a message. Up on the roof, on the roof's the only place I know where you just have to say and let it go.